Hello and welcome back to the Public Eye Business Podcast brought to you by Granite Exchange. I'm your host, Sarah Travers, and throughout this series, I speak with local entrepreneurs and business owners to learn more about how their companies have come to be, to gain insight into their growth, and find out crucially how they continue to innovate. So wherever you get your podcasts from, remember to keep an eye out for all new episodes and subscribe to stay up to date. Well, today in the studio, I'm joined by Dave Linton, and Dave is the founder of Madlug. All will be revealed. Dave, you're very welcome to the podcast and the podcast studio. How are you?
Yes, good, thanks, and it's really good to join you today.
Well, I really, honestly, since we started this podcast, you have been on my wish list to get you into the studio because today is all about business with a purpose. Dave, as I said, is the founder of Madlug, which is a UK-based social enterprise that provides high-quality bags for children in care. But under Dave's leadership, Madlug has distributed thousands of these bags and inspired a movement of advocacy for young people in the care system. Dave's passion, his commitment to this cause has earned him recognition as a social entrepreneur and an advocate for children in care. Dave, Madlug, first of all, explain what that means and then let's go straight into the why.
Absolutely. So Madlug basically stands for Make a Difference Luggage. And the why behind that is, as my wife and I, we are adoptive parents. We had done some short break or respite foster care since we were married. We had had one young person right through a whole journey with us, came once a month for a weekend. Still part of our family today. And I spent 22 years as a youth worker, so I really believe in the value, the worth and the dignity of young people and children. I believe that every young person is brilliant and they're incredible. And so we were in this place where we were looking at doing more fostering, and we had moved into a new area, a new trust area, and we had to go and do the training again. And it was in that training that there was a video showing, and a young person on that video made a statement. When we move, the local trusts or the local authorities don't give us suitcases. Sometimes foster carers loan us a suitcase, but more often our belongings are moved in black plastic bin bags, and we'll lose our dignity. So that broke my heart, and I thought, I'm going to fix that.
It's absolutely beggars belief, really, that is and was the norm. You wanted to fix it. I'm just wondering too a little bit about your own upbringing. What led you to be that youth worker? What led you to be that advocate for children in care?
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, my dad died when I was 5. That was devastating. But my mum was left on the edge of, we were left with a house with no mortgage on it, but there was no way of getting mortgage, no way of getting new windows, no way of getting anything. My mum didn't drive, she didn't have a job. It was the days when Dad did everything. And so, in those days when people, widows were given social workers, and we had all the kind of privileges that maybe it wasn't a privilege, but it felt like a privilege where we had like Christmas parties and toys given to us and social workers arranging holidays for us. So I kind of grew up in that. And then also...
Were you an only child then?
No, I had a younger sister, so it was the two of us. And so I look back and think, well, it was the surrounding family, but it was also neighbours, and that kind of kept us out of the system because it was pure poverty. We lived in an area that didn't speak poverty, but we were in that place, and neighbours allowed my mum to get a job and go out and learn and work. And so that kind of led me on to this kind of feeling that being supported by people who were like non-blood relatives, and guys that were neighbours who were a little bit older would kind of come and take me to football matches and do all that kind of stuff. So I was always well supported. That kept me out of that, and that just led this deep feeling of I want to be a voice for the underdog. Alongside that, Sarah, my mum got a job in a hospital. She trained as a auxiliary nurse, and then she was involved in setting up the Northern Trust she was one of the founding members of the Unison Union,
Oh.
and she advocated for people who were in real need. And so growing up, I saw my mum having people who were alcoholics at our dinner table. I saw her having people who she was standing supporting to try and keep them in employment. And so that whole model, and it was just one of, just fighting for the underdog. And that led me into youth work, where I just love young people. And I loved young people that most youth workers didn't really like, the ones that were the troublemakers, the ones that were thrown out. And I just love getting alongside this sense of the underdog.
And that came directly from, as you say, the modelling the behaviour of your mother, who opened her doors, and the non-judgmental nature. I mean, that's a lesson to us all, isn't it?
Yeah, she had it really tough. She didn't have a lot, but she always put other people first, and she always looked out for those in need, and she just did that. So it was just something that was just a real just model to me to keep me going, doing what I'm doing.
So youth work, first of all, what was that like?
I absolutely loved it. I was the person who thought I was going to retire as a youth worker. I just love young people. I still today love young people. If you give me a group, I was at Balmoral Show last week, and I just loved the stopping of these young people, having some fun with them, connecting. I went home to my daughter, and there was a little TikTok we put up, having a bit of fun. And she says, "Dad, you can tell that you're a youth worker," because I just love it. And so I never saw myself retiring or giving up youth work until I was faced with the bin bag story.
Yeah, let's pick up on the bin bag story. So already you knew you wanted to do something to make a difference, to help the underdog, you felt you were in a privileged position, even though you were on the cusp of care, but so many others find themselves in this situation that they have no choice over or control over. But the indignity of transferring from place to place, from home to home, even leaving the care system, the indignity of standing there with your bin bag, you thought, I've got to do something. What happened next?
Yeah, well, my natural was, I'm going to go back to the young people that I had in a drop-in centre every day that came with their school bags, and every year they were getting new school bags, and I thought, well, I'll just collect school bags or collect old bags and get them to the local trust. But then the research that I started to put in was over 100,000 children and young people in the care system, and one child moving every 15 minutes, and most of them with their belongings either in black plastic bin bags, or today's bin bag is the plastic shopping bag, which actually is no better. So the more research I did, I thought, I can't solve that with, getting my young people to do it. The other alternative was then to set a charity up, because obviously I was 22 years in a kind of charitable kind of approach, but I actually suffer from dyslexia. So for me, the part in youth work that I really hated was funding applications and funding reporting. And I thought, well, it's not my skill set. And also there was no further money coming into the pot of funding. So I thought, if I fix bin bags with a really creative story and a bit of energy into that, I'm going to take money away from other charities that are set up for funding, which means then I'm put into a competitor position rather than a friend fixing part of the care system, so we work together. And that's kind of where, and if you can't do funding applications, the only other way you raise money is climb mountains and do marathons. And I'm not that kind of person either. So I thought there's got to be a different way.
And the social enterprise way was the obvious choice then?
Absolutely, but I didn't even know what social enterprise was.
I mean, are you a business person at all?
No, I got ungraded in my GCSE business studies. And I knew nothing about social enterprise. I was inspired a few years before it at a conference, a leadership conference, on a model that came out of America called Tom's Shoes. And it was a buy one, give one. It was a one-for-one model. And I thought, what, they're brilliant. And I was an evangelist of that brand because I just loved the idea of doing business. I loved leadership. I just consumed leadership stuff as a person, and then was really inspired by that. And so when I was faced with a bin bag, I thought, well, could I do something like that, only using bags instead of shoes?
Brilliant. It's great when you can look to something and think, I love that. I love the core value of it. I love the difference that it makes. But you're looking at them and you think, how do I do it? And I know that the story works, right? So I am a journalist. I get that. But that's PR. PR doesn't put money in banks, or does it?
Well, I mean, I had £500. I didn't have. My mum gave me some money as a youth worker, so we didn't have any extra money. It was enough to pay our bills. And mum gave some money, and my in-laws gave some money, and we had £500. And it was a bit of like, we want to support Dave, but I'm not really sure about this because nobody had business ideas, and we just went for it. I spoke to my business friend. I says, a good friend called Mike, and he says, Dave, this is really good, but this is not North America, this is Northern Ireland. So it's like, what brands do we wear here that we have created here? Now, this is 2014, whenever there was very little of this. There's a lot more now. And he says, this is not North America, it's Northern Ireland. He says, basically, we're not used to brands, and we also don't like paying full price for brands. We like our brands, but we don't care if it's last year's colours, and we're getting our 70% off. So that's part of our DNA here. How are you going to get people to pay a premium price for a product from something that we're used to importing, and we don't really see ourselves? Because like as a country, we kind of are a little bit imposter syndrome in this kind of space, as we're not the creators of that, we're the receivers. How are you going to do that? And it was and I said, well, I was stubborn at the time, so I just did it.
Okay, so what did you do?
I took the £500, and initially as a youth worker, I was working with no budget. So I was able to create posters, I was able to create brands, I was able to do all that stuff as a youth worker for events, for programs. And I thought I'd start taking the idea and put into some sort of logo and adopting a bag type idea. I was getting a lot of feedback on it, going, that's great. But I met a guy who was just graduating as a graphic designer, and he said, I had coffee with him, and I showed him the brand logo that I'd come up with, and he looked at me and he said, Dave, I wouldn't wear that on a bag.
Right.
And it was like this.
So disappointed.
Yeah. But it was a real key moment, because as a youth worker, for me, I did everything. And I knew that to grow a business, I was going to have to learn to give up stuff. So every employee is giving up something from me to them. Everything. So if I couldn't let a logo go, I was never going to get the rest of the business stuff done.
And that was somebody that you respected and wasn't just having a dig or a pop, because, we do come across those people too, but he literally had your back.
Well, I'm not sure I knew him that well, but he was going to work with Jack Wills.
Okay.
He just graduated, so enough respect for the guy. And what I've learned since is that, the people around you who are closest to you will never really always, or rarely tell you the truth, because they want to protect you.
Right.
So for me, I've learned that you go to the people who've got the expertise, and you've got to be prepared to accept what they say. So that made the £500, £480 of that was the 40% deposit to a branding agency to get the Madlug brand done. And the £20 left from the 500 was my first month on Shopify. And so it was a matter of
gone.
Yeah, gone. But it was 40%, and I had 60% to find. But for me, it was I had to do it. And then what happened after that was money always follows vision. Mm-hmm. But if I had waited for the money to get the full amount to go and do the brand, to do all the stuff that I needed, I wouldn't have ever started. Mm-hmm. But I took the money, I took the risk, and the money followed the vision. And so what happens when people saw what that company had created, just as I had to pay, there was people who were supporting me and mentoring. It says, oh, there's a pot of money here. Just send the invoice to me and I'll sort that. And we got the rest of the bill paid. But they wouldn't have done that without seeing it.
Yeah. And did you find that people did buy into the reason, the purpose?
100%. It was in those days. It was easier, and it sounds like in those days it was ancient, but actually,
what year are we talking about?
2014,
right.
2015. So we launched the brand. We sold our first product in June of 2015, And so, in that time it was a lot easier. You could literally stand on a Facebook Live without any budget and tell the story. And that's how we did it.
And then you had other people who would maybe share or like, or have you seen this?
Yeah, so it just took off.
And were Northern Ireland people very proud of what you were doing?
Yeah, absolutely, because it was innovative. So we were, there's a number of these kind of brands now, but we were the first our first one-for-one business in Northern Ireland. We were the first people to take a risk, so we stood out as the innovators at that particular time. And then a few years later, I got the opportunity to mentor some other great brands that are around our country here, because people were saying, you've got to speak to Dave.
Yeah.
And some of those brands are even bigger than what we have grown ourselves.
And I've seen you're a great speaker as well, and you talk very passionately and from the heart. So, I do see you attending conferences and panels, and especially around being that social entrepreneur. Do you remember the first sale then? Who was it to, or was that a Shopify? Was that a click and send?
Yeah, the first sale was somebody I knew, but they had bought through Shopify. So and they've become our probably biggest customer. It's not a good friend. It's somebody just who really, I got to share the story on the journey, and then suddenly they were first in, and they've generally for the years been the first into a new product, or a Christmas time you get an order or two. But that's how it works. So the £480, there was no money. We had samples of bags and no stock. And the first Facebook live post was, we're going on sale tomorrow. Now I'll be honest, I broke the rules.
Yeah.
Being a youth worker, I had no idea of this, but now what I know is you shouldn't sell anything you don't have online.
Oh,
but
you're making me feel nervous and anxious.
But I didn't know that. I was just like, well, we're going live.
Let's
and
see.
I asked people to be patient. It might take 3 or 4 weeks to get your order. And so we got enough to get our first order in, and that's how we did it. I couldn't afford the risk of even crowdfunding at that stage.
And where were you producing or getting the bags?
I'd sourced a company in England that supplied the bags, and
you could get them quickly
They
sent?
could get quick and worked with us, and that was just how to do it. With the dyslexia, it's a super weapon, because what you do is you don't see walls that you can't get over. You just see them as barriers, and you work around them. So every area, when I was talking to bag manufacturers, so forth, I was hitting walls and I was thinking, how do I get round? And I kept finding solutions, and that's kind of how it's worked. And so I was asked recently about the dyslexia, or about if you could do it all again, what would you want? Would you want a degree? Would you want this? I says, if I got one thing, give me dyslexia.
Isn't that wonderful? So you just didn't see those same obstacles?
Don't see obstacles. It takes me longer sometimes, but I'm built in this place of
and
finding
you're solution
solutions.
focused, because you're so used to having to do that to cope with life and get through life.
Absolutely.
Yeah, otherwise you get left behind. I love that. So your super weapon is your dyslexia. Okay, so you go live. You had, I know about one customer, but how many people bought the bags when you went live?
I think we had 100 people. The first, and that was, so it took us 4 weeks to get that out.
And 100 people. And can I ask, what were you selling the bags? What are the price range?
The bags were £30 at that time.
Okay.
I had no idea of fat. I had no idea of putting margin in for potential of wholesale and retail, all that stuff. At that time, it was just like, what are people paying for a bag in the competitor space that kids are wearing, people are buying? And I just set that as a price and thought, well, as I grow, I can cut the price down here and create the margin. So that was kind of the thinking behind it.
And did you have one bag that you started with, or did you have a range?
I had just a classic backpack. So even the whole idea of classic was that I didn't have to be innovative around product. So we put our innovation into story. So if every brand had a pocket and had a classic design, and they did at that time, you had some of the like Hypes and Eastpak and all those, and Adidas and all the brands are out there, they literally had this pocket and simple bag, and I thought, well, let's stay classic, which is why then we went for a very bold logo on our bag.
So, just getting my head around this, you have 100 sales, and then you need to make sure that 100 bags go to young people in care.
Yeah.
How did you manage that side of the business?
Yeah, so the challenge in social enterprise is always, you're running two organisations. So people don't see that part, and often what happens is you end up in this place of being really good at business, and then the mission that you started with gets forgotten about, or it gets tagged on, or you get caught into the mission part and your business doesn't work. So it's a real tension in the social enterprise space. For me, I had 100 bags, and I was spending a lot of time networking within the care system and spending time building trust. So when I spoke to local authorities, local trusts here and in the UK, what was happening was directors were saying, or frontline social workers were actually saying, we need these bags. They were going to mid-stage, middle management who were going, not sure, because what had happened 10 years before was there was policies and campaigns ban the bin bag. So the directors at trust level were actually thinking it had been dealt with. Mid-management knew it hadn't been dealt with but didn't want to get into necessary trouble. So what happened, and the front line were seeing the bin bags being used. So we set up a very clear strategy, was we were never going to go and fight and use a big stick and start campaigning against it being wrong. We were going to take a strategy into the care system of empowerment. The 10 years, the policy, the procedures, that we said nobody desires young people to be moving with bin bags. So that's a fact. It's happening because the processes aren't there. How can we help and fix the process? So we went and told directors, we want to empower you to deliver your policies by giving you free bags. And that's been our strategy, and we worked enough and we kept that going, and now the demand is actually outstripping our sales. Right
really?
across the UK.
That was my next question. I wondered, were your sales outstripping the demand? Did you have a huge stockpile or no?
No, we've built we've built a trust. It's because we've been really intentional not to. I mean, if anybody looks on our website, you'll not see the sad story with a kid with a bin bag. Our whole thing is about what we're trying to build, the vision rather than the problem, and we've been building the trust and just kind of getting on and doing the work and building relationships. So we never talk negatively. Our whole core is value, worth, dignity for children and young people in care. If we believe that for children in care, we've got to believe that for management, for directors of trust, for social workers, for foster carers. Even though sometimes there's bad practice, we've got to take that as our base level. And when you get that, that's when you bring the significant change.
Do you actually get to see young people with their bag, or do you just leave that? I mean, have you had feedback as to what? Obviously at the end of the day, if they go, ooh, I wouldn't be seen dead with that.
Well, when we were doing the work on, so what we do is every bag we sell, we give a pack-away travel bag to a child in care. And the reason it's a pack-away travel bag is that we sat down with a group of young people from FOIPIC at the time of creating...
Voices of Young People in Care, yeah.
At the time of creating the idea. And we said, look, is this a problem? Is this a solution? And at that particular time, Madlug wasn't really a brand. So they said, we love it, but we don't want Madlug on the bags because we don't want to be stigmatised as children in care.
Gotcha. So you were labelling these children
We didn't want to. So the bag we sell to the consumer is Madlug, and we call the people who carry Madlug bags as consumers as Madluggers, people who carry their life in one of our bags so that children, young people in care can make their way with dignity. And then we give a pack-away travel bag. And they said that the problem with bin bags is that it's generally social workers weren't prepared. Bags take a lot of space in a boot. When they move into a residential home or a foster home, sometimes there's nowhere to store a bag, so just a sock drawer. And so we took this kind of like little pack and mac type approach, 35 litre travel bag. And when it's folded into a little pouch, it says this: you are incredible, value, worth, dignity, because they told us they wanted value, worth, dignity on their bag. And so that led us to this idea of the the selling a bag, giving a pack away travel bag. One of those bags opened up holds 20 of those bags folded up, which means that a social worker has one duffel in the back of the car, or a police officer has one bag and they can help 20 children, or they can help one child with lots of stuff. These young people even told us, Sarah, that the size mattered of the bag, because if you give a child too big a bag that has no stuff, it reinforces the problem, where it's better to give 2, 3, 4 bags to a child that has more. So we got that information, and that's what we have created.
So once again, you've completely pinned back your ears and listened
100%.
and not told people what they want and what they need. You knew what the problem was, but you listened, and the solution has become obvious.
And we're not driven about patting ourselves on the back,
No.
because the risk in the kind of space is, it becomes more about the feeling we get about, so we give sometimes things to people in need, not because of what they need, it's because it makes us feel better. And it'd be be a nicer story for us if we were given little bags filled with teddies and pajamas and toothbrushes. To the consumer, they would absolutely love that. But actually what we're saying is their stuff actually matters, even if it's dirty, even if it's wrong size, even if it's their stuff. And we're giving them a bag that's not a bin bag to put their stuff into.
Even if it's that oldest teddy they've had forever.
Absolutely.
And they don't want that replaced. You've mentioned you've got a team.
Yeah, I've got a team now, but whenever I started, I always talked about we. Because the vision is not to do this as Dave. And the vision is that it takes an army to do it. So I believed, even when I was on my own, I had people around who were like giving me an hour of their time. I talked about this as a movement, and so the we was in the narrative, in the story, to the whole way through, and I just had I was in that place where I saw the problem, I've created a solution, and the call is to invite the customers into that story, so that we, even our customers, are the heroes of the story, not our team. So we are the guides, because we've created something and we've asked people, we're guiding people to be heroes in the lives of children, young people in care.
And everybody is part of that movement. Okay, I get it. But back to the business side of things, I suppose this is a business podcast.
Absolutely.
This is about entrepreneurship, which of course you are, a social entrepreneur, but how did you grow the business then? How did you develop it? About 10 years in now.
So we've never taken investment. We've taken a few grants, but very, very small. A couple of £1,000 here, a couple of £1,000 there. I didn't take a salary for 3 years on it. I ended up finding other ways of funding Dave in this, and in that initially I thought it would take 5-6 jobs to just allow flexibility, and I ended up with finding, because we were innovative, I ended up doing a bit of mentoring to social enterprises and getting paid better rates, which meant I worked out less to enable me to work more in the business. So that's kind of how, so from somebody who failed business, somebody who's never been to university, but because of setting Madlug up and it being first, it allowed me to be paid well to coach other social enterprise product businesses.
So it all came together, and that's at the end of the day, you have to keep a roof over your own head.
Absolutely.
You have your family and your extended family that you need to look after. So take us to where the business is now. You started in 2014, first sales in 2015, 9 years in at the time we're recording this podcast, and you've just moved to new premises.
Absolutely. So the business is 9 years. The impact that we've given is 102,000. The value of that, Sarah, is £1.2 million of money back into the care system that we have generated, that we have prevented ourselves taking grant money. If we had taken grant money as a charity, we'd have had to find 1.2 million to have the same impact. So we've done business. So through that has been selling bags, and we started with that to a place where we are selling a lot of bags, and there's a team of 5 or 6 of us now, and we're recruiting a couple of people currently into the business, and some freelance workers as well. The real growth has happened just through having the right board around me.
Okay.
And having the expertise and realizing I can't do it, realizing that on my own I need expertise, I need people around, and that's been part of it. And for instance, the board that I had around me, there was one person on that board who said whenever COVID arrived, even though I shouldn't probably use that word because I'm trying to move on from it, but it's like with 2 months reserves, nobody was buying bags, and this guy says, Dave, we're not in crisis. We're either in business or we're not. Just keep doing what you're doing. Get creative. We didn't furlough any staff. We had 3 of us at that time. We didn't furlough any staff. They told me, look, Dave, it's if you furlough staff and you're about just keeping, then what you're doing is you're protecting yourself as a leader. Let's go with this. Let's take the risk. And we went for it. And
how did you feel at the time?
I absolutely, just went for it because I loved again, it was solution, challenge. Every week I found I was losing. I felt like, nobody's buying bags. We got creative. We put a activity book. We got some PR and stuff from it because it was innovative again. And it was literally one of the team had an art degree who was working on it. And I says, do you know those iPads with little pens? Could you trace some of our Instagram images and turn it into a colouring book? We could send kids in care while they're stuck in homes.
Gosh, so your staff were actually working on that then? Because I was going to say, if there's no money coming in, were you worried about sort of cash flow and paying people? And if you didn't furlough them,
absolutely. So
but you managed.
But so we just went and we just kept. It felt like we were losing. But here's the thing, that was the March, the August. What happened in this space was, Social Enterprise was trying to get some support from government. There was some funding arrived in the August time, and they said, we'll give you up to £75,000, measured on last year, and on your forecast. And I thought, well, we had a job coming, which I'll tell it's a big corporate that landed, that our forecast was looking pretty healthy, but our last 6 months felt like it was losing.
Yeah.
I compared it to the year before for that grant and found out we were more profitable in that year, even though every week I felt like I was losing. And the learning for me in this in leadership space is, it's like if I'm out in a storm in a boat, I could throw an anchor in and I can get beat, which is what a lot of companies were doing, throwing anchors in and you don't know if you're going to survive or how long the storm's going to last. Or you can go and hit the wave and you've no time to go under and do all the financials and all the detail. You're hitting the wave, you're turning left, turning right, and you're getting to the end. And that's what I was doing. My best leadership call was in the storm.
Yeah.
And actually only when I did the checking in on it afterwards, I had made some of the best leadership calls that we were more profitable. What also happened, that in that August, we got a phone call from IKEA and says, we have sent 3 of our staff out to look at a product, a social product for our Christmas gift, and they've all come back with Madlug as their number 1 choice.
Gosh.
Can you supply 12,000 bags in the next 8 weeks?
Gosh. Oh my goodness. I'm emotional here listening to that. How did that make you feel?
So it was just like, and we then had to find 12,000 bags in 8 weeks.
Of course you can. You said yes.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. We had nothing else, and if I came now, we could do 12,000 bags. But if it came now, that kind of growth spurt from where we were to where that was going to take us, and we signed contracts that and all the stuff to make sure it had to be on time. We had the NDAs, first time we've ever had to do any of that stuff. And they made an animation and went out to 12,000 staff. In fact, I ended up 13,000 by the end of the project, and told the story of Madlug. And we have like our bag on. Even if you go to Belfast today, the IKEA, and you look in the exit, you will see their community board. And this is 4 years ago, and we are still the product that they talk about for Christmas gifts.
Is that right? And they're just so proud of that. And, let's look at the corporate side of things. I mean, because that's really how you grow, isn't it? You get in with the IKEAs and you're flying, literally flying. And I know we've moved on from corporate social responsibility. The CSR for companies is massive now, and it's ESG now, isn't it? Environment,
absolutely.
social and governance, I think. And, you know, people want to work for organisations who do good, who look after their people, place, planet. And that's where Madlug is genius and fits into exactly, you know, I would, if I was sitting there and the big CEO of an organisation, it's hard to go past it, really, isn't it?
Absolutely. Well, the hard part about the IKEAs and is that corporate gifting world is, you know, you get a huge job like that and you have to replace it next year. So that became that was the number one task. Is okay, we were able to give 54% of our turnover that year, the COVID year, to our charity foundation to give more bags.
So you have a charity foundation too?
We set up that so that we could focus the commercials
Yeah.
through the community interest company and have a board that's really switched on in the commercials, and that we would have a foundation to deliver the giving and to connect with the social. So that's been a last 2 or 3 years. But we were able to give 54% of the turnover, not the profit, and still pay corporation tax that year because we ran business so well with that IKEA. We then replaced it the following year with Shopify in Canada. And Shopify, we were selected as a brand they want to talk about in their reporting.
Oh, actually Shopify, not right. Okay.
So we ended up there the next year, and they said, you know, we do stuff like this, and next minute we get a phone call. Could you supply our swag bag for all our staff? So we had 3,000 bags to Canada, New Zealand, Republic of Ireland, and we ended up launching their virtual conference by me sharing the story and thanking every staff member for what they've done. Because Shopify, you know, every developer has created a platform that I don't need £100,000 to set up Madlug, of which I would never have got Madlug started. But they've given a system that I can pay £20 a month.
Oh, do you know, Dave, it is just the most inspirational story, which is why I really wanted to bring you here today and share this story to people who hadn't heard it. And I'm sure they'll all be checking out the Madlug website and seeing how they can help. And maybe if they have a big organisation, what could they do to make a difference? I have a question in front of me here. And I don't know whether you've answered it already, but what would you say you're most proud of, or what has been your greatest achievement to date?
My greatest achievement is when I see and get the feedback of young people who have experienced the bags, and I see I get the opportunity. I've met many care experienced young people who absolutely are the biggest fans of Madlug, and for me to grow something, to be accepted into a world that is pretty protective of the care experience community across the whole of the UK are very protective and close, and yet I get invited in because they really see, they trust, and they love Madlug. They feel value, worth, dignity, which is what I set out to do. You know, I've won loads of awards. I've won Entrepreneur of the Year for Northern Ireland for Great British Entrepreneur Awards. I've been in London competing against some of the dragons from Dragon's Den in categories where there's 6 of us, and one of them being Sarah Davies. I've met Richard Branson. I've been to Buckingham Palace. I've done all that stuff, but nothing moves me more than actually seeing a young person come and say, "This is incredible, thank you." I'll tell you a story, Sarah, just off one incident of this. There was in 2018, I went to this youth festival. We still go with it just because we started there, we keep it going. And we saw 1,500 young people, 300 young people carrying Madlug bags. And it was just really inspirational to see, well, our bags are starting to compete with all the other brands. As a result, a youth worker was there, and he says, "We have a young person in our group who's in foster care." And I said, "Well, there's no risk of stigma here. Tell them just to come down, choose a backpack from our stand, let you know the colour. Don't even have to talk to me, because I know what it's like being a youth worker and talking to young people. Is you see them in your youth centre, they love you, and you see them in the park, the head goes down, they're embarrassed, and sort of the young person. So I didn't want to put this young person into an awkward place. Just choose the colour, let you know I'll give it to you as a youth worker and you can pass it on. And the last day we were there, the youth worker arrives down with this young guy and says, Dave, this is Jay. And I says, how you doing, Jay? I says, what colour backpack would you like? He says, I'm colourblind. I says, what football team do you support? And he chose a red bag. So I took a red bag and I give it to him. I says, Jay, tell me your story. And he says, I've been in care for 10 years. I'm 17 and a half years of age. And in that 10 years, in a 2-week period, I moved with my belongings in bin bags 15 times because some challenges going on, breakdowns. He says, what you do is amazing. What you do is amazing. What you do is amazing. And I looked out of this tent marquee. I could see all these young people walking around, and tears started coming down my eyes. And I turned around and I says, Jay, I'm sorry, because the tears were coming down. He says, it's all right. I says, what's really amazing is that there's over 300 young people on this site who have chosen Madlug over other brands. Why? Because everyone believes that you're incredible. The little message on the bag. You have huge value, huge worth, deserve to be treated with dignity. Jay takes his bag, big smile, goes off, comes back later that night with his friend, half his height. And I remember just the smile of this girl. So obviously he had told the story of the impact. And he says, I just had to come back to you to say thank you. And he flung his arms around me. That's not the end of the story, sir. 2 days later, he gets on the Facebook Messenger and he says, I met Dave at this event and I've just been blown away that what I've decided is for my 18th birthday, I'm going to give all the money that I get to the work of Madlug so that our young people can experience what I have experienced. See, something in me, that is what I get out of bed for. And that's what I've realised. So Madlug is more than giving a bag to a kid. What we've created and what we're inviting our customers in is when you wear our bags, you're shouting love without words to young people who often feel unseen, uncared, that society outside of the professional world know nothing about. And we didn't realise it at the time, but that's what our main super weapon is now. And what we're doing is empowering people to say we care, we see you, we know you, we believe in you, and we love you.
Right. I don't know how to follow that story. It's unbelievable. It really is about business with a purpose. You mentioned at the start that money follows vision. I'm sure you have people queuing up to take this off your hands, let you head off, or do they see you as always part of the Madlug story, or do you see yourself as always part of the Madlug story?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's limitations, like we're asking questions all the time about what does this look like. Do we just grow the charity and, offload the brand and stuff like that? First of all, the brand is a community interest company, so the asset is, I don't own any of it. I intentionally set this business up that I would never be able to be accused of making money on the back of story of children in care. So I have a board of directors who choose my salary. I'm CEO of it now, but they choose what I get paid. I do not choose that myself. I do not make any of those decisions for me. And if Madlug as the brand was ever to be acquired, all the money is locked to have to go to a charity that's working with children in care or another social enterprise. So for us, that's there's no win for Dave.
Yeah.
In this, there's a challenge. We've still got a lot to do. We want to grow a bag brand, but there's also the opportunities that present on, could we sell it? And people do come and ask all the time, keep us in mind if you're ever thinking of offloading the brand as a social brand. We would love it, but it's not even in the thinking.
But you're growing that brand now, and you'd love for people listening to this, I'm sure, to become Madluggers too.
Absolutely. I'd love to invite people to be Madluggers, so consumers out there, people who just need bags for their everyday, school bags for their kids, and then companies that are doing their ESG. So like we have Lloyds Bank, we have major construction companies right across UK as we're their preferred bag brand now. So we've moved even more from that corporate gifting to now the tech world, where whenever somebody's onboarded, And that's a more reliable, consistent business model for us, because they're able to measure the one child. So I'd love to invite people into that story.
It's an incredible story, and I'm sure people will love to be a Madlugger and get involved too. What did your mum make of this?
My mum was my biggest fan, and in 2020 she unfortunately passed away, and she was one of those, didn't die of COVID, but she was one of those people that had, we had to bury her with no people around, and but if I was to say to anybody out there, she was my proudest, she was the biggest fan, and I was her biggest fan.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure she just must have been completely so proud of what she'd achieved, and it all came from her core values and what she had shown you. Now, Dave, the last question is one that I ask all of the people sitting where you are, but it's slightly different because I suppose we're looking at that social enterprise today. But the purpose of the Public Eye podcast is to inspire existing business owners and ambitious entrepreneurs to grow their business by offering an insight into the success of businesses such as the incredible Madlug story. So what advice would you give to people who may have an idea but have no idea where to begin or are unsure as to whether the risk is worth taking?
So first of all, I would say you got to find your black bin bag story. So the black bin bag story is the story within the story. So I'm not trying to fix a care system, I fixed the bin bag story. Now that doesn't have to be a social, but in a social enterprise focus, you want to find your black bin bag. So if it's homelessness, it breaks your heart, don't try and fix homelessness. Seek what your black bin bag story, the story within it, the black bin bag. So you've got to find that. That's your USP. That keeps you as a player on a pitch rather than a competitor. Because too often we set up businesses and we try and copy everybody and we become competitors. And actually when you find your black bin bag, which then is your story connected to that story, that's where the magic happens. You then know how to communicate that, you know how to share it, and then you can build your business around it. The business part's the easy part. And it's the finding the exact what that is and being really focused in on it, and because that the communication of story and inviting people in, you're finding the problem you're solving, and so when you're really clear with your problem, which is your black bin bag story, then you can call people into right, and that's where you make money. That's where you build business. That's where all that. If you just want to do a business without that, you're just going to fight and compete and use a lot of resource. So that would be number one. Number two is get people around you who are not your family or your friends, but go and seek some of the support that's out there with straight talking entrepreneurs. And if you can afford, get a really good business coach, leadership coach, because the key to it is leadership in the middle of how you develop that. So that's what I would say.
Two incredible pieces of advice from a wonderful leader. Dave Linton, thank you so much for joining me in the studio today. I hope you've enjoyed listening to Dave. And yeah, enjoy the Madlug journey if you haven't discovered it already. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Dave, thank you for joining me in the studio. And do join me again for another fantastic episode of the Public Eye Podcast very soon. This podcast was recorded in Granite Podcast Studio. Interested in starting up your own podcast but don't know how? Granite Podcast Studio can help. Record your podcast in our state-of-the-art studio, which is based in the heart of Newry City. Our studio has cutting-edge and user-friendly technology and can seat up to 4 people. We also provide an editing service for our team using your guidance and editing notes to provide you with a flawless finished product, leaving your listeners wanting more. For more information on how you can get started, visit www.granitepodcaststudio.com.